When I was still in the research and planning stages of my blog, I needed to get some research into my audience to find their likes and dislikes and all that sort of stuff. And we were introduced to a website called SurveyMonkey that allows you to create really good surveys and then sort of target them towards your audience and get them in, collect the results, analyze the results, and get some really good research. I'm going to show you the initial research one that I did, and it allows you to create a survey like this. You can add questions, do all of this sort of stuff, and then you can see how many responses you've got, and then you can analyze the results, which is really helpful. So here is a question: what genres of music do you listen to? And it showed sort of how the percentages of people that answered who liked what genre of music. And you can do this with each question, and then what I did is I then analysed the results, and I think this was really effective because it allowed me to easily get the information on my target audience, and it made it easy to analyse the results and figure out what I needed to put in my magazine to target them, so that they would like the magazine. To show the audience the survey and get them to answer it, I posted it on Facebook and Twitter, which are two very popular social networking sites, which just allowed me to target my audience very well and just get it out there. Another piece of technology that I used to create this coursework, or to help with this coursework, was a website called GoAnimate, which allows you to easily create animations to and put in text to help with the animation. There are two modes. Originally, when I first used the software, I used the quick video maker because I hadn't used it before. It allows you to, so if you choose this one, if you choose your characters and everything, and then you can type in your dialogue, but with the quick video maker, it only allows you to use 10 lines of text, and each line, or each thing of text can only have 180 characters, which is very limiting, which I think meant that the first GoAnimate that I did wasn't very good and it wasn't very effective. So to fix this, when I made my evaluation question, I used the video from scratch option. And once again, you can use a different template, whatever, and it'll load up. And then once it's loaded, you've got a lot more freedom. You can add people in, you can add different backgrounds, and you can add as many different sort of frames of the video that you like. Unfortunately, the text is still limited to 180 words or 180 characters, which meant that I had to learn a skill of sort of making my information more precise, which I think actually made it more effective and a lot better, made the animation a lot better. And then once you've done that, I wanted to, instead of making a link on my blogger, which meant that you had to click on the link and go to a separate web page, would be very annoying for the amount of links that I've got in my on my blogger. I used something called embedding, which is basically you get the HTML code, and these are called iframes, and the way to do it is if you go to the HTML, and what you do is you copy and paste the frame that they give you, and then when you go back to doing it, it's then there on your blogger, which means that you can just have it there, and it makes it very easy for the person looking at your blog to be able to view it. Another piece of technology that I used to create this coursework, or to help with this coursework, was a website called GoAnimate, which allows you to easily create animations to and put in text to help with the animation. There are two modes. Originally, when I first used the software, I used the quick video maker because I hadn't used it before. It allows you to, so if you choose this one, if you choose your characters and everything, and then you can type in your dialogue, but with the quick video maker, it only allows you to use 10 lines of text, and each line or each thing of text can only have 180 characters, which is very limiting, which I think meant that the first Go Animate that I did wasn't very good and it wasn't very effective. So to fix this, when I made my evaluation question, I used the video from scratch option. And once again, you can use a different template, whatever, and it'll load up. And then once it's loaded, you can you've got a lot more freedom. You can add people in, you can add different backgrounds, and you can add as many different sort of frames of the video that you like. Unfortunately, the text is still limited to 180 words or 180 characters, which meant that I had to learn a skill of sort of making my information more precise, which I think actually made it more effective and a lot better, made the animation a lot better. And then once you've done that, I wanted to, instead of making a link on my blogger, which meant that you had to click on the link and go to a separate web page, would be very annoying for the amount of links that I've got in my on my blogger. I used something called embedding, which is basically you get the HTML code, and these are called iframes, and you can, the way to do it is if you go to the HTML, and what you do is you copy and paste the frame that they give you, and then when you go back to doing it, it's then there on your blogger, which means that you can just have it there, and it makes it very easy for the person looking at your blog to be able to view it. When I first started this coursework, I needed to create a timeline of music magazines, and I did this using a website called Prezi, and basically it's a much more interactive and more interesting version of Microsoft PowerPoint, which is quite bland and quite boring, and it makes it sort of, as I said, a lot more interactive, and you can add zoom ins and zoom outs, and you can focus in on specific bits of information, and the user interface on the website is very easy to use, and I found it very easy to use even though I hadn't used it before. But even though it was quite easy, I'm not really that happy with the final product, because it's still just images and text, and then more images and more text like it would be on a PowerPoint. It's just got fancy zooms. So when it came to my evaluation questions that I wanted to do with Prezi, I wanted to make it a lot more exciting. And to do this, I discovered that you could actually add audio onto each sort of section of the presentation. So instead of putting in an image and lots of blocks of text, all I did was I put an image on, and then on that image I then put I used Audacity again to record a voiceover of an explanation that I'd written out, and then used Prezi and used this option to put a voiceover on top of this path, and it just makes it a lot more sort of interesting. Instead of just looking at an image and reading text, it just makes it sort of more interactive. And as you'll be able to hear in a second, when creating this magazine, so it makes it a lot more interesting, as I keep saying, and I just like it a lot better. For this coursework, I had to take some images to put into the construction of the magazine. Um, and to do this, I used my DSLR. It's a Nikon D70, so it's not a new DSLR, but it's still pretty good quality. Um, and I already had quite a lot of experience with taking pictures with DSLRs and using lighting and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't a technology that I learned per se, but it was something that I could improve on. Because I'd already done it before, I already knew all about aperture and shutter speed. When I took the pictures, I forgot to turn down the ISO, which meant that the pictures were a little bit too grainy for my liking. I also took the pictures in both JPEG and in RAW, and RAW has a lot more editing capabilities. So when it came to editing the photos, I found the photo I wanted looking in the JPEGs. So if we say I wanted to edit this one, 9498, I'd then go back to the NEFs, find that image, which is 9498. I'd then open that in Photoshop. It'll take a second to load up, and then when it was open in Photoshop, obviously I can rotate it, and to get rid of the graininess of the image, I messed around with the exposure and everything just to sort of, and then I increased the clarity, and that sort of made it a lot sharper, and a lot, as I say, a lot less grainy. And then after that, it was still a little bit too grainy, so I used some filters, and you can filter a noise filter and reducing noise, and you can sort of do different things. That is a little bit too complicated to go into now, but you can use that to reduce the graininess. And I think learning about that, because I didn't know about that before, learning about that made the images a lot more effective than they would have done if they were a little bit less, a little bit worse quality with the graininess and everything. It wouldn't have come across as a very professional magazine. At the end of the planning stages of my blog, I had to create a pitch for my magazine that would hypothetically go to the institution that I wanted to publish my magazine. And instead of just doing a boring sort of webcam video, I wanted to do something a lot more professional. So I researched on the internet, and learnt about a thing called 3-point lighting, which is where you have a key light, which is the sort of main light that's on the person in the video, the fill light, which it lights up the background, and then something called a hair light, which sort of separates the person in the video from the background, with sort of a small light outline. And I think this made it a lot more professional. Unfortunately, I made the video by myself, so I ended up accidentally focusing more on the background than I did on myself. But I still think it came across very professional. And to make it even more professional, I added in some, see if I can find it, added in some graphics, sort of bringing up the questions that were in the pitch. And to do this, I used a program called Adobe After Effects, which is something I would use before, but it still allowed me to learn a little bit from it. So I created some different the different sections of it, and then used keyframes to say when it would fly in, when it would fly out, etc. And then rendered it and uploaded it to YouTube. And then once it was on YouTube, as I've done before with, as I explained before with the prezzies and everything, I used YouTube to embed it onto my blogger, which made it my blog page, which meant that I didn't have to put a link, which would then take them to the YouTube page, which would then have to load up, and be distracting from the rest of the blog. For the construction of my front cover and contents page, I used a well-known program called Adobe Photoshop. Because of my experience with taking photos and photography and all that sort of stuff, I've had a lot of experience with Photoshop, although I've never used it in this way to create this sort of publication, which sort of allowed me to learn a few different things. I learned how to use sort of the basic tools, such as the text tool. If I select it, to create a new text layer. So not very helpful there because it's underneath all the other layers. Along with that, you've got the selection tools, the lasso tools, and all that sort of stuff. Before I started this, I didn't previously know about things such as adding drop shadows, which is sort of a very key section of my work. And the way that you do this is, to this one. If you double click on this, and it brings up this layer style box, which I knew nothing about when starting this project, and sort of learnt all about how you can add shadows, color overlays, all that sort of stuff to make it look a lot more professional. Things that I had used before were things like adjustment layers, so I knew all about adjusting the brightness and contrast, using curves to have more precision in adjusting the color levels and all that sort of thing. And sort of I've never really had to compete with all these different layers, and after a while I found it very difficult to keep track of what was where, which sort of became a weakness because I started losing things and not knowing how to get to something to edit it. So to fix that, I went onto the internet, onto YouTube, and researched how I could group things. So I found out that you could group layers into sort of subfolders, which made it a lot more organized and a lot better, and allowed me to create this this professional product. And as I said, even though I've used this before, I still found myself learning things, such as I'd never known there was something called a magnetic lasso tool, which sort of allows you to, we go to the image, this one, allows you to sort of go around it quite easily, and follow the colors, instead of using the magic wand tool, which sort of, if with this picture the colors are sort of very similar, and it makes it very difficult to select certain things without cutting out certain bits of the person, like you've got here. And another thing that I learned while creating things with Photoshop, and basically the whole coursework, was I found a website called DaFont, which is a very good website for getting certain fonts that you wouldn't normally get in a program like Photoshop. And originally, so if we choose this one, originally I would just type my text in here, and then once it loaded, I would print screen, go into Photoshop, scale it up, and then top of everything else. And then using this tool here, and then sort of deleting the rest of it, all that sort of stuff, and basically it didn't have a very professional product, because the text became very pixelated. So what I found out is that you could actually download the text, and you could actually sort of install it into Photoshop, and then you could type your text, and then you could change it, as I've done with this one, Crimes Times 6. You could then find it in this list and allow you to sort of have much more fluidity and a much more capability of editing. And all this sort of knowledge of I gained from doing this, all this research, and it sort of furthered my knowledge in Photoshop and allowed me to create these two quite professional products. For example, without the drop shadow, none of this would be standing out from the page. Without the strokes, these would look quite bland, and I think it just made it look a lot more professional. As part of the construction of my magazine, I created an album cover that would go on the front cover and the contents page. When creating it, I wanted to add this sort of effect of the 3D text sitting on the ground. And before starting this coursework, I had no idea how to do this, which meant that I needed to do some research into it. I watched some YouTube videos and looked on certain websites and found out that you could create 3D layers, which is what that text layer is there. So I created the text and then converted it to a 3D text layer. I then went to the 3D workspace, which then allows you to adjust sort of how it looks in 3D space. You can move it, so if I like that, I could then move it backwards in that 3D space or move it forwards in that 3D space, and it basically gives it the effect of sitting on the pavement. And it was something I got quite excited about, and something that I thought made the whole thing look very professional, like it would be done by a company that be paid to do it. And I think it just added, it was only something small, but I think it added to the front cover and contents page, and I think it was just one of my big strengths in this whole coursework. To construct the article for my coursework, I used another Adobe program called Adobe InDesign. This was unlike Photoshop, it was a program that I'd never used before. I didn't really know how it worked, as a lot of the tools are similar, but they seem to work in different ways, and I wasn't as confident as I was with Photoshop. And I think you can sort of see that in how professional the final product looks. I don't think it is as professional as the front cover and contents page, although I'm still happy with it. Because I wasn't very confident with it, I actually went and watched some tutorials on YouTube from this one person who did some really good tutorials. It was actually someone who our teacher had pointed out to us, and he basically goes through how to add text, images, all that sort of stuff, and make a professional product. And hit W on the keyboard just then, brings up the borders, and as you can see, I've used columns to make the columns of text the same size, which is something that I learned from the video. Also how to sort of put everything in. Something that I didn't learn from the video was how to create these sort of boxes around the text, and it was actually quite simple from watching some different YouTube videos. You just use the rectangle tool. You type the text out first, use the rectangle tool to make the rectangle the size that you need it to be, and then arrange it so that they are behind the text, and then you can color the text to get this nice effect. Basically, the main tools that I used for this construction were, of course, the text tool to put in all the text, and the rectangle to do all the rectangles. And then something else that I discovered from all my research into how to use this program was to create these sort of highlights, because these aren't boxes underneath. Because I tried doing it with boxes, and each time I edited the text, the boxes moved around, and that meant that the text wasn't on top of the boxes. So to do this, I figured out that you needed to go to something called underline options, which allows you to affect. So if that was on 1 point or 2 point, that would just be an underline underneath the words. But because I made it bigger than the actual text size, it has sort of made it look like there's a border around the box. And I think this was quite a big strength when creating this product, because it made it look like a professional article, and I just really like the way it turned out. Another thing that I learned from watching different videos online is how to put images into the document, because I found out that you couldn't copy and paste like you could in Photoshop, and I've spent a lot of time not really knowing how to put the images in. So after some research, I found out that you had to go File, Place, select the image that you wanted, and then place it into the document. But I also found that using the two different arrows, you've got two different boxes. You got this blue one and then the orange one, and sort of the blue one acts as a sort of cropping box, and the orange one acts as a sizing box, and it was very difficult to use that. So I discovered that instead of doing that, you can just use the percentages to sort of scale down the size of the image, which made it a lot easier to edit. And then to create these things here, I actually used Photoshop and used my graphics tablet to write it out, and then did the same thing with placing the images into the file and then using the different arrows to move them around. And I think after I'd done all the research, I became stronger in using the product and using the program, and I actually created a product that was looks quite professional, and I'm reasonably happy with it. But as I said, I don't think it's as strong as my front cover and contents page.